TiE is devoted to entrepreneurship. Our mission is to foster entrepreneurship, and we do that in several ways. One of them is this: we have monthly meetings where we try and have an hour where people get an opportunity to network, and then we bring in speakers or a panel to discuss topics of interest. In addition to that, we do something called TiE. It's called the Young Entrepreneurs. And Preeti's told me to speak about TiE today. So TiE is for high school students. And we have over a period of 5 or 6 months. It's going to start November 21st, October 14th. We teach them all about starting a business and entrepreneurship. Typically, last year we had 25 students from about 11 or 12 local high schools. And what we do is we sort of marry classroom education with practical work. So we start, we have sessions on marketing or accounting or finance or presentation skills. And then these students in groups of 4 or 5, they do business plans. And they have a mentor. We generally try and get a mentor who has had some experience working in that particular industry. They write a business plan, we have a competition, and these classes are held at the Rady School. There is some prize money. But to me, the biggest thing is the 2 things. First is I've noticed these students, they come in at the beginning of the session and they're uncertain and things like that. And on the final day, they're wearing suits and they're doing this wonderful executive presentation. They grow so much during those 5 or 6 months that they stay there at this course. In addition to that, the winners from each of our chapters go to a national or an international competition. So they have the ability or the opportunity to go and compete with teams from London and Brussels and Hong Kong and Dubai and New York. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. So we have prize money, and we also underwrite the cost of their travel along with their mentors to the national competition. Introduced Sandeep, who's going to speak about the potential and impact of robotics and artificial intelligence, I don't understand. And Sandeep, but he's a charter member, he's a VP at Qualcomm, and he's really a wonderful, wonderful guy. He's joined our executive committee recently, and quite honestly, he's brought a lot of energy and a lot of fresh thought into our executive committee. So Sandeep.
For that really gracious introduction. Welcome again tonight. I think we have a great event for you on a topic that I think is weighing on the minds of a lot of folks in Southern California and in San Diego. And I think by the turnout, it's just proof that in fact this is a hot topic. Can you guys hear me okay? In the back, maybe? Yeah? All right. So what I'd like to do, first of all, is invite the panel up to the table. If you guys are done, and then please. And we'll do introductions in a moment. I also want to apologize in advance to the panel if they have to kind of crank their neck back a little bit. It's just the way the arrangement is. We will have a few slides and maybe some short video clips to help stimulate the discussion. So hopefully that's not too much of an inconvenience. Go ahead and make sure all the mics are turned on. While that's happening, what I'd like to do is also highlight, and we have some representatives from this organization, that there is going to be a very, very important conference on robotics here in December, in mid-December. And it's Robo Universe. And my understanding is that this event is going to draw maybe like 1,500 people. I think that's the number that was given to me. Maybe that's even too low, I don't know. But 2,500, so there you go. So off by a significant amount. So this is a pretty important event. It has notable speakers, of course, and it's going to be broad in its content. It's going to cover vertical applications as well as different forms of the technology, and as well as manufacturing and logistics, the nuts and bolts of this growing industry. It's the first trade show dedicated to the service of collaborative robots, and so it's a first of its kind. and there is a registration link and also a discount. That's always important. So there is a discount code, and of course the sponsors are listed. And on your table, you will actually find brochures or little flyers for this event. So if you don't want to note the link, just look on your table, excuse me, and you will in fact find a white sheet of paper with that information. So with that, again, tonight we have a very distinguished panel organized, and I'll introduce them in a moment. And, the topic, again, the potential and impact of robotics and AI, it can be a very broad topic, and we're going to try and keep it at a higher level for the general audience. But I know we have a lot of enthusiasts and people that are experts in the field probably in the audience as well, and so we'll have Q&A at the end, and we encourage a lot of interaction with our expert panel. Also for the panel, we'd like to keep it as informal as possible. So while I tee up a question and maybe we start on one end of the panel, feel free to jump in. It's friendly, it should be fun and interesting, I think, for everyone here. So with that, we will dive in now. One thing I wanted to do to help tease the topic out is, robots and thinking machines have been in pop culture for decades, if not more. And so I thought I'd start the evening with a little bit of a teaser to kind of get us in the right frame of mind. And let's see here. This works.
Hello, Hal, do you read me? You read me, Hal? You read me, Hal? Hello, Hal, do you read me? Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal?
Affirmative, Dave. I read you.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
Where the hell did you get that idea, Hal?
Dave, although you took very thorough precautions in the pod against my hearing you, I could see your lips move.
All right, Hal. I'll go in through the emergency airlock.
Without your space helmet, Dave, we're going to find that rather difficult.
Hal, I won't argue with you anymore. Open the doors.
Dave, this conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.
Hal? 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 Hal?
That's from 5 decades ago.
Hello.
Hi. I'm Caleb. Do you have a name?
Yes. Ava.
I'm pleased to meet you, Ava.
I'm pleased to meet you too.
So tonight's panel hopefully will help us separate vision from fantasy. And it's interesting, the 2001 clip always gets me because it's almost 5 decades old. But the scenario is very pertinent, I think, to maybe what could happen today or even tomorrow. So we'll try and get into some of that. With that, I think I would like to introduce our distinguished panel to help us decipher the future as it relates to robotics and AI. Allow me to start. So, Professor Tom Bewley from UCSD. His undergraduate work was at Caltech and his PhD from Stanford. He directs the UCSD Flow Control and Coordinated Robotics Lab. He currently works at the intersection of semi-autonomous agile robotics in the analysis, estimation, and forecasting of environmental flows using advanced control theory and numerical methods. His coordinated robotics lab is developing an array of clever vehicles to achieve maximum agility with minimal complexity, and is coming to the mass market with a number of small toy and educational robot vehicles in collaboration with Huawei Robotics. Their first jointly developed product, MIB, recently was awarded Innovative Toy of the Year by the Toy Association of America. So welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Olin Hyde, CEO and founder of Unblue. He is a serial entrepreneur who wrote his first line of code at the age of 12 on a home-built computer. Previous startups include National Facilities Group, acquired by Accruent, and Auto Semantics, acquired by AI1. Olin is one of the principal architects of the DeepMind machine learning platform, which powers all of Unblue's products. He is a frequent speaker on how artificial intelligence can help people make better decisions. Rasto Ivanek, President and CEO, platform at the end there. Rasto Ivanek, President and CEO of Group Solver, Inc. Rasto is co-founder and CEO of Group Solver, an online platform for customer research and collaborative problem solving. Before Group Solver, he was a strategy consultant at McKinsey & Company, and later he led business development at Mendel Biotechnology. During his career, he helped companies make strategic decisions on developing and managing new businesses, pursuing market opportunities, and developing partnerships and collaborations. Rasto is a trained economist with a PhD in agricultural economics from Purdue University, where he also received his MBA. Dr. Eugene M. Izikevich, co-founders, chairman, and CEO of BrainCorp. He is a computational neuroscientist known for his contributions to the theory of spiking networks. He pioneered a novel approach to spiking neurons that combines biological plausibility with efficient implementation. In 2005, he implemented the largest thalamocortical model, simulating the same number of neurons and synapses as the human brain. He founded the Brain Corporation to build a biologically detailed model of the mammalian brain to enable a new generation of robotic devices that can learn. He has authored many peer-reviewed journal publications and 2 textbooks in computational neuroscience. He is the founder of Scholarpedia and the editor-in-chief of the Encyclopedia of Computational Neuroscience and the Encyclopedia of Dynamical Systems. He graduated from Moscow State University with an MS in Applied Mathematics and from Michigan State University with a PhD in Pure Mathematics. He was a senior fellow in the theoretical neurobiology at the Neurosciences Institute in San Diego until 2009. And there is more information on izikevich.org regarding his academic accomplishments. Last but not least, Albert Wang. Dr. Wang is Director of North America for Qualcomm Ventures. His current investment focuses are mobile cloud computing and cross-platform solutions, with an expanded interest in disruptive startups that harness the confluence of social, mobile, and cloud computing trends. Albert has led many investments and serves as a board advisor on many startups, successful startups. Prior to Qualcomm, Albert worked in various engineering and management roles in the wireless industry, as well as MEMS and nanotechnology in the wireless industry, and also in other firms working on RFIC. Albert has received his MBA from UCLA Anderson School of Management, his PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Cincinnati. So with that, I'd like to welcome our esteemed panel. Special thanks to Hansel Hong, CEO of Robolink, for helping to promote the event, but also to help bring some demonstration items from his company for us to share and enjoy during the networking hour. Also to Professor Bewley and others that also came with some demonstration items. Clarissa Redwine and Ping Wang from Techstars, also the accelerator in San Diego focused on robotics. They were also very helpful. So with that, we'd like to get into the actual panel discussion and start with, basically a framework question for all of us, which is we have AI and robotics in our collective consciousness. Well, what does it really mean? What should a person interpret when they hear the term artificial intelligence or robotics? Professor Bewley, I don't know if you can help.
I'm going to defer to the AI guys to start the answer to this one.
Well, robotics is a little different, but
I'll
all
ping
robotics-
back afterwards.
All right, no worries.
Let's start with these guys.
It's a great question. I think that every discussion around artificial intelligence should first we should agree upon what is intelligence, or how would we measure intelligence. And from our perspective at our firm, we look at intelligence as how well a model explains and predicts reality. So we can have very narrow models that explain a very small domain, or very general models that explain a very broad domain. And one of the features that's really important in our work is interpretability. In other words, can the human interpret the machine intelligence to understand why the machine believes there's a correlation or a causal relationship between two features in that model. Our work really started with developing machine learning platforms for the U.S. military. Our first early big customer was Lockheed Martin. And the question they asked us to solve was, is an unknown target friend or foe? And to answer that question, we need to look at what is the intent, or infer what is the intent of that particular target, so that we can identify, for instance, whether it is a Norwegian fishing ship or whether it's a Chinese ship with Norwegian radars. For instance, that would be a very simple use case. And obviously, in the warfighting environment, it gets much more complicated than that. What we do, our mainstay business, is actually modeling customers to find business-to-business sales leads. And the way we do that is, I would describe it as intelligence augmentation as opposed to artificial intelligence. And this is an age-old dialectic between AI and IA, where IA is really oriented and comes out of the human-computer interface work of how do we make humans more capable than they would be otherwise. Whereas AI is very interested in how do we replace a human. And we just saw two clips which show a very age-old trope of how do you contain superhuman intelligence. You can put it in a box, but then how do you control it? And I think this is one of many possible outcomes for the eventual evolution of AI, but it's certainly not, this dystopian future is not an inevitability. It is one of many possibilities. So we believe that how you construct models is very important. And the models obviously become more adaptive and autonomic over time, so it's very important, those initial conditions. And I would say that that's probably one of the most important engineering problems that we face now, is how to control the evolution of IA so that it remains an augmentation as opposed to a threat.
Eugene?
Actually, I was very flattered that I'm at the center of this table until I realized I have no microphone. Yeah, this clip was almost 50 years ago. I'm almost 50 years old, and I think that this technology is still more than 50 years away from where we are right now. And I challenge all of you to look at YouTube videos from the recent DARPA Robotics Challenge, which was just 1 hour north of San Diego. It was a simulated Fukushima condition where robots have to drive a little golf cart and then go and open the door and kind of make rotations of the valve. And look at the winner and look at the typical performance of typical robots. And you'll see how pathetic robotics is today. Not even close to what we have there. Could you just give you an example?
Is the mic on? Maybe.
I'll repeat the guts of what I said. How pathetic robotics is today.
You get a highlight.
Yeah, this is the highlight, this is the summary. And believe it or not, today we don't have a robot that can open a door. It's like you have a normal door with a handle, maybe this one, maybe it's a push handle. To make this robot is a 5-year PhD project for a group of multiple very smart graduate students, and they cannot open all the doors. This robot will cost $500,000, and it still will fail on maybe more than 10% of doors. So this is the state of the art today, and yeah, we can show all this Terminator and all these movies just to scare people, pretty much like 250 years ago when the first engines appeared. Right? Just people were afraid that all machines are so powerful, they're much stronger than a man. Man cannot kind of physically fight the machine, therefore we all will be killed by those machines. It's not going to happen. It's just close the door. Just keep you safe. Robots can jump there. So I'll stop here.
No, but that's great. We'll have more on that, actually. Roscoe, any thoughts from your perspective?
Well, I was wondering what I'm doing here, because I am anti-AI. Not that I don't believe in the future, but the approach that we are taking to our work in Group Solver is actually maximizing the intelligence that sits in the room, which is our human brains. And I just think that we are just scratching the surface of how we can actually use all these billions of brains in any kind of coordinated way and solve very difficult problems, which are not, which way more difficult than opening a door. So to me, what intelligence means is the ability to make decisions and learn from mistakes, changing the patterns to apply to a successful solution in the future. And to me, it just seems so very complex that when I started our company today, the easiest way to do it was just to use us as a collective brains. And we try to find the simplest, easiest way to do that.
That said, your technology is quite sophisticated. You have natural language processing on the front end.
A little bit. But the really core of it is not that. The core of it is using the human brain's ability to recognize patterns really quickly, even though they are seemingly very different, and associate them together. And that's where we go. But now I understand we have an Eastern European corner here.
Can I
Yes,
jump in?
please interject.
Yeah, so I think there is some competition between physics-based deterministic approaches and creative approaches that learn relationships that you might not be aware of before you get started. I wouldn't go quite so far as to describe myself as anti-AI, but I think I'm a little bit closer to you than in your background than these guys. So we've worked a lot on model-based control, and so to try to figure out how to inverse slinky your way upstairs, looking at F equals ma and modeling the physics of motors and how things move in order to get small things to go upstairs. For the door problem, we've said, well, opening it is difficult, but can we squeeze something underneath and see what's going on behind the door? So finessing our way out of the larger situations, but being able to get over.
So this is what people should be aware of. You sneaking under the door, not help.
Yeah, cameras getting into places where they shouldn't be.
But actually, we have a slide on that. We'll get to that as well.
But in firefighting situations where you have one fireman show up at the front of a Walmart, that the fire alarm's been pulled, he's got to clear a very large area, being able to throw in some inexpensive bots that have cell phone grade technology that can quickly clear a room and can peek into offices and see if anybody's incapacitated or can't hear the alarm or just ignoring the alarm, and can quickly give you situational awareness, identify fumes, identify hotspots, and within a couple of minutes have a very large area mapped, you know what you're dealing with. That's valuable. So there are certain roles that are really going to be game changers in terms of security and response to bad situations.
That's actually a great segue into the next slide, and we may be able to, which is, why should we care? So, for those that have been around long enough, when you think about AI back in the 80s and 90s, the Lisp machines and the 5th generation computing movement, out of Japan, tons of hype, did AI and robotics, or especially AI, did it have its day? Are we just seeing another hype cycle, or is this really important stuff? And I think Dr. really touched on a little bit of it. But should everybody in this room, investors and entrepreneurs, really care about this stuff? Will it really affect real problems in the world? Like you said, opening doors, stuff that we have under control, but are there other big problems just waiting for this technology to solve? Should we really care about this stuff? Feel free, anybody.
Absolutely. In fact, it was really wonderful when I first got here. I talked to some guys that were doing quantum computing. And I think we've had a couple AI winters and a couple AI summers. Going back to the 1950s, it really is, we've had several of these so-called hype cycles. The difference this time is now we're getting computational power that can actually do some really interesting things. And I think the future of what's coming out with very high density or high performance computing clusters, whether they be quantum computing or other technologies, really opens the door for algorithms that previously were limited by what we could do computationally. Google just announced that everything they do will have machine learning embedded into it. So it's not a question of whether it's going to affect, it's a question of how. There's always a first mover advantage in these type of exponential curves. So if you're an investor in the audience and you don't have a machine learning play, you're probably not going to do as well as those that do.
I want to add to that. I think computational power, of course.
Is your mic on?
Yeah. The computational power definitely helps a lot. But I think what makes this wave different is also the man-machine interface. Can't hear you. If you look at the man-machine interface, in the past, you look at the video there, it's always the talking to the machine, right? Speech recognition. But until very recently, speech recognition was not usable. Right? Siri is probably one of the first products that's actually usable by the masses and actually has some dry humor built into it. And increasingly, machines are becoming more like human in that aspect. I think voice control, speech recognition definitely play a big role.
And so the point there is that to access all this power that rolled into that is now becoming easier and more intuitive.
Yeah.
That's the point I think I should think.
More consumable.
Yeah. And actually, Rusto, on this one, your technology is all about the human-computer interaction, isn't it?
Yeah, so I was going to say that I'm not really anti.
No, we won't make you pay for dinner.
So I was just making a point that the way we approach things is different. But I think there's a real limit to the more computational power, the more storage, the more everything invites you to building more complicated algorithms and just go through the brute force and getting some of those things done. I think the key here is to find the distinction between where you can, when those things are really applicable and there's no way around it, and use it. And there's a smart way of cutting through the problem, the open source, right? You might not get 100% solution, but 99 might very well solve the problem. And so, when we always, of course, optimize our algorithms to use as little computational powers on a startup budget. You're paying for everything, so it's kind of like forcing us to do that. But the point for me is really the future for AI is for us, for people who are very easily seduced by the listening new technologies and more power, is to find a balance where we actually have to do the hard work and make a decision ourselves and use our own thinking.
You guys have set up nicely the little quip I had at the bottom here, which is all about computational power. So from a book called Robot Future by a professor from CMU, I know it's on the other coast, but basically he's pointing to Moore's law and he's saying, with processing power doubling every 2 years, in 40 years you'll see a factor of 1 million increase. And just as a comparison, if you look at walking relative to jet travel, that's only a factor of 100 efficiency increase. And if jet travel has changed the face of humanity, which I think a lot of people might argue it's a lot more efficient than walking everywhere, and also in things how things move, including diseases, everything's changed as a result of jet travel. And that's only a factor of 100. What will a factor of 1 million do to society and everything in it? So leading to that thought. So let's go to this next slide, which is, so we talked a little bit about various techniques in machine learning and AI. There's a field of study: supervised learning, unsupervised learning, reinforcement learning, deep learning, reasoning by analogy. I mean, it's quite a broad field. and then, of course, the application into robotics. Does our esteemed panel feel that there's one method or approach that outweighs the others? You know, right now you hear a lot about deep learning, DeepMind getting acquired by Google for $500 million. There are some others, you know, Alchemy API by IBM, et cetera, et cetera. Or does everything have its place, and does everything have its approach? Just a quick thought on the field itself in terms of the nuances. Maybe, Eugene, we can start with you.
First, DeepMind was acquired for 400 million pounds, which is $650 million.
There you go. 400, 600, so right in the middle.
I'll take the difference.
It's the deep learning algorithms. They're either most of them are unsupervised learning, but it's different ways how you teach your system what to do. With supervised learning, you present examples, you tell exactly this is a cat. This is
Closer to the mic, please.
okay. With the supervised learning, you present examples, say pictures to the system, and you show this is a cat, this is a dog, this is a cat again, cat, dog, cat. And then you train your system just by giving explicit examples. With unsupervised learning, just you present a bunch of natural images, and you hope that the system somehow can figure out this type of distribution among themselves from certain clusters or certain presentations. And reinforcement learning is basically what anybody who has a dog knows, and anybody who has a cat think he knows. She knows that you train your animal by reward and punishment, mostly by reward. Just you give a treat to a dog when it performs that's an action that you want it to do, so that next time in the same context with the same cue, it's going to perform the same action again. So this is just the three basic fundamental ways how you can train a real system. And then you can see all three types of learning. You can observe them as part of function of different parts of the brain, or how you can actually train an animal to do what you want, or a human, for that matter. So I wouldn't say that one of them is more important than the other. There was from the 50s, there was AI went through winters and summers, and it's particularly neural network, artificial neural network research had a lot of promise 20, 30 years ago. Then there was these promises were not fulfilled. It was a winter, and then the recent deep learning systems, which are basically were developed, kind of pushed forward by only 3 researchers who never never gave up. It's a kind of true renaissance because they solve really hard problems related to visual perception. And what's nice for me as a neuroscientist is that they pretty much borrow as much as possible from the brain. So not kind of purely AI kind of artificial algorithms. They're based on a lot of ideas and principles that we learn from neuroscience.
Thoughts?
Yeah, and you're probably speaking of Hinton and some of the others in the deep learning space, which, I believe that, our platform is an ensemble approach. There's different technologies are better at certain problems than others. And so I agree with Eugene that there's not one is superior to the other. It really depends upon what you're trying to solve. In the use cases that we attack, the hardest problems are feature identification, which really gets back to what I think Rasto and I would actually agree upon is what are we really trying to solve and what are the features that are most salient to do that. And in those cases, all 3 approaches that Eugene described can be used. So I think that the hard part is how do you tune or configure an ensemble approach for a specific use case. And the state of technology today is very good for narrow AI. We have not reached, in my opinion, a place where we really have generalizable intelligence. So in that regard, I would agree with Eugene's earlier statement that we were pretty nascent in the stages of what we can actually do with it.
I would like to add something.
Please.
That people don't realize that most of the progress in the last 20 years in artificial neural networks and AI and machine learning is actually due to San Diego.
We're definitely going to get to that.
Like Jeff Hinton, he was a postdoc and he was a researcher at the Salk Institute at UCSD 20 plus years ago when he developed all of his fundamental theories, right? And then later were improved by having better computers. Together with Terry Sinowski, together, and the whole PDP, the parallel distributed processing movement, started in San Diego by McClellan and Grunewald, who then moved to Stanford and Pittsburgh because
Pittsburgh, we lost
yeah.
Pittsburgh.
Then you can go on with respect to just that the very first in the world department of cognitive science department was at UCSD. Right? So yeah, so people don't realize that this it's like UCSD was always the nucleus where all the ideas were kind of created, and then just it exploded and spread off like a virus. Because this idea just all over the world, different through the United States, and very rarely people realize that the germ of it, just those people working together, like having coffee together, just kind of interacting together. It wasn't at MIT, it wasn't at Silicon Valley, it was here, just like half a mile from where we are.
And later in the presentation, we want to talk about, and Olin had a blog on this very topic, how San Diego becomes the nexus or the hub for the renaissance in this field. So hold that thought, I think that's very important. Professor Bewley, any thoughts as it relates to the field of robotics in terms of methods and techniques?
One thing that is easily overlooked, I think, is that robots operate in the physical world, and we know F equals ma, and we know how to model physics of fundamental small things moving around. We can model motors and dynamics really well. And when we get to fluid systems that are complicated, to figure out whether or not Katrina is going to hit New Orleans or is going to hit the swamp 300 miles to the east of there, to figure out how long it's going to take Patricia until the winds die down below 200 miles an hour. These are problems that we're able to do much better with the computational power that we have today, and so it's being revolutionized by modern technology and high-performance computing and hard work in modeling physics and sending sensor vehicles out into the environment, robotic vehicles, to gather data. And the problems aren't being solved in certain classes of problems here by learning algorithms, but rather by physics, F equals ma, Navier-Stokes equation, and the blood, sweat, and tears of putting that together in high-performance computing, coordinating with the dispatching of sensor vehicles to gather the right data to do those problems better. And so I would say that there's a large class of problems that advanced robotic systems enable that are relevant today for million-dollar questions, like where will that hurricane hit? How big will it be when it gets there? That we need to come back to. It's enabled by physics and high-performance computing of the Navier-Stokes equation.
That's another great setup for the next slide, which was, what are the necessary technical or commercial breakthroughs to really spur these fields, the fields of robotics, artificial intelligence, or both? And I think, Professor Bewley, you started to touch on how there are enablers as it relates to servo motors, or maybe battery technology, sensor technology. And Albert, I'd like your opinion as well, as you look at the things that feed into these fields. I think Olin or maybe Eugene, you might have mentioned how cell phone technology, I know we have a bunch of Qualcomm folks, and how the processor is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper as a result of the economies of scale of the consumer cell phone market. They've actually been a boon for these fields. So can we just talk a little bit about that? Maybe Albert, I don't know if you want to jump in. We'll start
I like to model any system, right? Either computing system or any economic system. There's three categories. One is computing, there is storage, and there is I/O. So if you look at robotics, we all know the computing power is doubling very quickly. Storage is not a problem at all. But the sensory aspect is actually still challenging. I'm not even talking about you put a sensor there, you can sense the pressure, sense different kind of physical signals there. But we're just talking about how do you sense human emotion? Right? How do you quantify that? How do you quantize that? I think that's actually a very big challenge there for the solve.
Are you seeing, from an investment perspective, enough companies working on those problems?
We're actually seeing companies start doing that. So this company called Jibo, right, out of MIT, and they actually said the social robot. I think Professor Brazil spent a lot of years in trying to model the human social interactions and different personalities and trying to build in there. So I think that's a very encouraging aspect. I think it's definitely a necessary breakthrough we need in order for robots to look more like human.
Just to give another plug towards Qualcomm, as a non-Qualcomm guy, I guess I can.
Sorry, we'll take all the
All right. So when Charles Bergen gave is Charles here?
You know, I don't think so.
All right. So when he gave a talk almost 2 years ago, when he announced Qualcomm's essentially major push into the robotics space at an EVA Nexus event, he showed one of their pre-production SOMs at that event, and he held that thing up in the air and had the slides on the board. James there, and he described the power of this thing in a way that really resonated with me. He said, okay, this thing, which is 3 centimeters square, it's 10 times more powerful than a Cray 2, which is the fastest supercomputer in the world in 1985. And I was very impressed by the Cray 2 when it came. We got 10 of those running at less than 1 watt in something that's that big, that you can put on a balloon, or you can put on hundreds of balloons and send into hurricanes. You can communicate using cell phone grade technologies. I mean, high performance computing and cell phone grade small computing and radio technologies are, I think, without a doubt, the key things that make this current revolution in robotics something that's really going to stick and make a difference.
So performance, power, and cost, those three have come together to create a perfect storm for R&D.
I would like to add to this that if you look, robotics was promised to us by science fiction writers 70, 80 years ago.
Yes.
Right? I grew up in Soviet Union, so I wasn't exposed to Jetsons, but I heard this wonderful lady, Rosie, from the Jetsons, supposed to take care of everybody. I had to go to YouTube just to people were telling this to me, and I had no idea. It's like all the baseball analogies, just like please use soccer analogy if you need to understand this. But so we have like, people like our generation grew up with this expectation that by the year 2000 there'll be robots everywhere doing all sorts of chores for us in the home, in the office, in the farm, in this, like everywhere. Where are those robots? So just like what happened? I mean, nobody talking about the internet or the cell phones. We're talking about robots, and they're not here. And actually, you think that it's so difficult to build a robot. Just look at what Tom is doing. Just look at his toys. Look at his robots. Those are amazing in terms of mechanics. Those are amazing devices. Just why couldn't they be used just to clean my house and do my laundry and do my dishes? Right? Just I mean, he can build a robot that has an arm that can actually handle dishes and maybe can pick up. Why couldn't just I go every evening, drop my dirty clothes on the floor and go to sleep, and then somehow miraculously in the morning I go to my walk-in closet and everything is washed, dried, and kind of stuck together. And if you think about what is the reason for that, we have compute power, we have expertise in building mechanical systems, right? Everything's there. Why are they absent? And it turns out it's not the problem of building the body of the robot. It's the problem of programming the robot to deal with this environment.
It's the unknowns, the uncertainties.
It's the uncertainties of this environment. And that we have amazing robots in car factories that actually can do this iteration like millions of times, and they're not humans around because they're blind, they only do this, right? They don't need much sensors just because the environment is very sterile, very constrained. But once you kind of have a real environment, and I already mentioned an example that you have a real door with a real handle, suddenly just to program this robot to do anything useful becomes a challenge. So one approach we took as a Qualcomm portfolio company is actually using machine learning and computer vision to teach robots what to do instead of programming them. But it's the software, the programming aspect, the enablement aspect. Basically, it's a software problem. One of the Google early architects, Scott Hassan, who built the Google server, who built the first, basically he built the Google engine, search engine. He started a robotics company, Google Garage, and he famously said that robotics is not a hardware problem, it's a software problem.
Somebody needs the technology. You know, that's a lead into the second part of the same question, which is, as robotics and artificial intelligence and machine learning flourish, which other industries or technologies will benefit as a result? So, you know, as we think of, telepresence or telerobotics, for instance, with virtual reality, that on its own is quite a hot topic. But is there a knock-on effect that as robotics or machine learning, the applications start to take off, which other fields should investors and entrepreneurs eye that will also take off as a result. Any just quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one of the largest fields is precision agriculture. So the precise delivery of water, pesticide, fertilizer to individual plants.
Through
large farms.
drone technology or?
Through drone technology, initially to map an area, hyperspectral imaging to figure out the conditions of different plants. And maybe from there, I think that's a very large potential in order to get a lot more yield out of a given acre of farmland. And I think second after that is AI video games, where I mean you can't underestimate this consumer market for really driving technology. People spend a lot on games to play golf, to play some enhanced video game that has something running around on the floor. People pay a lot of money for these things, and that helps drive technology in the robotic space. I would say that the third category that I would mention that's very, very important would be elderly care. So the longer that we can keep our parents at home and not at a care facility, so the problem there is to see when something changes in their routine. If they spend if they don't come down at the usual time in the morning, if they spend too long in the bathroom, if they fall down, if it always happens, and to the aspect of having some interaction. If they can't have a pet anymore, to have a robotic pet that can be something that can give them some interaction. All of those pieces of being able to make elderly comfortable at home for longer is going to become more and more important.
So entertainment and leisure, I heard,
Yes.
and healthcare.
And precision farming.
And farm agriculture. Olin, I know you started the conversation with military.
Yeah, I would say that it's even more broad. It's easy to predict where it's going to go by looking at unit economics. So if you look at the unit economics where you have a very high per unit cost, that's going to get attacked. Or if you have vast scale. So in the use cases that we go after, business-to-business lead generation is a $118 billion a year market. And the markets that we go after right away are the places where people are paying, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 a lead. So we can deliver that for less than $1. That's a really nice curve for us. And I think you're seeing that in other, as the professor pointed out, in vast scale markets such as gaming, which is probably about a $60 billion a year market. That's very attractive. You also see it in places with oil and gas exploration. Liquid fuels is a $1 trillion global market. And Sapphire Energy, which started here in town by a friend of mine, a lot of their early discovery was modeling genetic mutations using genetic algorithms, which is a class of machine learning. You could consider that a class of machine learning. So I think if you look at a good canary in the coal mine is to look at industries people hate. And I think most people don't like lawyers. And ask lawyers how much electronic discovery they use, and you'll see that the entire evolution of lawyers has changed because of the introduction of electronic discovery, has eliminated the need for first-year associates to a large degree. And so that's where you have very high unit cost of economics, rudimentary natural language processing technologies that were actually developed here in town by SAIC in the late 1990s. Those algorithms, which are the high-dimensional spatial vectoring approaches of natural language processing, are overwhelmingly used in electronic discovery. So I think the professor was right, and I would like to add on to it everything that involves high unit cost.
And we'll come to the technology impact for society a little bit later. Rosto and Albert, any thoughts on additional industries or implications as a result of the research and work that's being done? Are you guys seeing add-on effects based on the technology that you guys are pioneering or that you're keeping an eye on?
Well, I can speak of robotics, but I think when you think about military intelligence and think about modeling the crisis in Syria as a fluid dynamics problem, with a whole different set of variables. I mean, think about what you can do. If you could just predict what's going to happen in 6 months, how much human suffering can.
Just based on the way maybe refugees are moving or troops are moving? Or...
And also just even things like identifying targets in terrorism and things like that. I mean, there's so much information out there, you know more than I do. There must be a way that this can be done more efficient. So I think that's going to be very high unit cost.
Albert, any thoughts?
Yeah, we're actually seeing a lot of startups and working robots to replace at service level, because service sector jobs. You see like security guard jobs being replaced in this 21st century, like the robots walking around taking pictures. It looks like security guard, and you have startups making like burger flipping machines, so you don't need people in McDonald's anymore. And you also have robots that makes teas. You know, so service industry is a huge sector, a huge part of the U.S. economy. You know, and just imagine all these repetitive, low-level, entry-level jobs get replaced by robots. That's going to have a very profound social economic impact.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Question?
He outranks me. I'm
No, no.
I'd like to actually follow up on Albert said that, yes, there's a high value applications, which could be the easiest one to attack, but also I believe that the biggest impact will be on all the low-paying jobs, like the minimum wage jobs. With respect that, think about it, why is it that certain activities only pay you minimum wage, $9 per hour, whatever, $15 per hour, pretty soon in most places? Just because it's a dull, very monotone job that doesn't require much education, just doing over and over again, just flipping burgers or doing janitorial work or picking up strawberries on a farm, which is actually, if you look at how people were picking up strawberries 100 years ago and how they're doing right now, it's exactly the same thing. They have plastic containers now instead of wooden containers, but nothing changed. They still they do it by hand, so that all the minimum wage jobs, which none of you are parent and dreaming and thinking my children are going to grow up and they become elevator monitors, or they become janitors, right? Or they become farmers, like picking up strawberries by hand. So those are jobs which actually somehow denigrate the human dignity with respect that just we use people as robots just for their dexterity, for the mechanical, for the eyes and for the hands. So all the jobs which will be replaced by robots first. And the reason they will be replaced by robots, not because they're minimum wage, but because those jobs don't require much intelligence or education. They're just very monotone. Something that should be the easiest thing to automate by technology. And this is, I think, will be the biggest impact.
If I could add on to that, because I think that there's a great book that was written a few years ago called Race Against the Machines by a couple guys out of MIT. And if we look at building upon and agreeing with what Eugene said, is that the great value of human intelligence is largely emotional. How we form connections with each other, how we relate to each other. That's why we'll never be able to replace the sales.
So hold on that, because I got the next slide. Perfectly.
Okay.
You're all set to go. So I'll skip this.
No emotional intelligence.
Let's come back to this.
Lots of
What
emotional intelligence.
are things that machines will not be able to do? Right? So why don't you go ahead and pick up where you thought.
Well, I don't know about
Go with the
your,
image.
I'm leaving that one to you.
I don't know about your sex life.
So as long as you were on that riff, I thought I'd jump to this slide. So what is it that are jobs or functions that machines will never take over? And I think you started to touch on relationships.
Yeah, highly emotional jobs. Like the role of a physician is not just to prescribe drugs. We could probably get even a bad version of Watson, IBM Watson, to do that. But the value of the physician is actually the empathy with the patient and how to develop those connections. And that's something I think, I hope we never replace, because that's part of the joy of being human. And what Eugene was pointing to is really kind of strikes home. I grew up in Appalachia, in a coal mining and steel town. My wife grew up on a Puerto Rican coffee farm, and we were surrounded. We grew up in environments where people, those jobs are now gone. And so what we've left are these great gaping holes in society that are being filled with the worst that society has to offer: drug addiction, socioeconomic displacement. And I think as technologists, it's really important for us to think through what can we do with intelligence augmentation to actually empower people to live better lives. And that's a real interesting challenge. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was about to jump in this direction, that when you talk about replacing all of the jobs that are dull, dirty, and dangerous with as a target for applications for robotics, an immediate question that comes to mind then is what happens to the people who are doing that unskilled labor? And I think you make room for a larger middle class of developing and servicing those robots that do those jobs, and you can be more productive with the land that you have, and you can spend more time hopefully taking care of each other. And I think there's I think there's some pressure when you have to displace from one field like steel manufacturing to other jobs. But then as that transition happens, the quality of the human condition improves. In that, I really think that this trend,
the long run effect is better.
The long run effect, I think, is good. I think the democratization of technology and of robotic technology in particular is something that there is fear about. The Terminator movies, all the way down to the GM employee who lost his job to a welding machine, and I think it's our jobs as technology-oriented folks to help dispel that fear, to see that in third world countries, if people, everyday people, learn how to access technology, they can figure out how to make clean water and live demonstrably better lives, to be less sick, and to just improve the human condition. That's what technology can do. And I think sometimes Hollywood does us a disservice by having all of these spectacular Terminator movies and things like that. I mean, I think it's a little more mundane, but the fact that we can use technology to clean water and these sorts of problems, I think is big and is real and needs to get some attention.
I was going to bring it up later, but since we're talking about it, one of the counterpoint was, and maybe the article didn't do it right. So in The Economist a few months ago, there was a whole article on technological unemployment. And, I've got a little chart later, which I'll show you guys, just a cartoon, but there was a piece of data in there that said that since 1980, for men in the U.S. between the ages of 25 and 54, there's been about 11.5% unemployment that was correlated back to some form of technology displacing them. What the article didn't say, to your point, Professor, is what happened to those people, where did they go? Yeah. And overall, since the 80s, society has progressed forward, so has been a net negative. Now, that said, there's a lot of folks that talk about driverless cars and driverless trucks and all of this, but the same article talked about how young men, again, in the U.S., a lot of them drive taxis, a lot of them drive trucks. And so this is, again, that classic example of maybe a mundane, monotone job, but at the same time, societally, it employs a lot of people. And what is the transition for those people as Google and others create the driverless car and the driverless truck and the Amazon drone that delivers the package? And is that something that as technologists in the technology community that we have to weigh and consider, or do we just hope that it should work itself out because the long run effects have always proven that?
I think, sorry, I'm going to pull the economist hat.
Yeah, please.
But I mean, the human society has been dealing with technological change forever.
Okay.
And yet, everybody's lifetime there is a friction, and unfortunately, there are people who cannot adapt and they will lose the job and may unfortunately suffer. But overall, you cannot argue that we are better off today than we were when we were just running the sticks through the ground hoping to plant some seeds. It's just, unfortunately, we cannot worry too much about it because people work itself out. And at the end of the day, I think all that matters for us as a progress as a society is developing our own human capital. Everything else is just a tool we use. The better tool we have, the more we can use our capital and build more things. So I think it's just a non-problem. It's a red hat.
I disagree. I think it's not about human capital. It's about human purposefulness. We have to, as humans, need a reason to do something, a reason to answer. And this, do we allow the situation to get to the point of the French Revolution where we have such extreme disparities between the technorati and everybody else. And this is the long-term trend that we're towards. And so, do we have the right economic model for this?
Okay, so the French Revolution was not about technology.
No, it was not. No, but it illustrates what happens when you have extreme disparities of wealth.
Exactly.
It was about an extreme difference between the haves and the have-nots.
Yes.
And so, going back to that phrase I used a moment ago, the democratization of technology, I think, is the key to make the large middle class, a lot of startups
Exactly.
doing a whole bunch of cool things in robotics, rather than just Qualcomm and Google and Apple dominating. And it's the fact that we have a huge proliferation of a whole bunch of people doing cool things that are useful for society in all of these sectors. That's how we're going to get the balance here.
And just to drive further this point is that if you look at the history, imagine right now it's not 2015 but 1915, and we're talking about this new thing, that internal combustion engine, and how it's going to also change the way all the people that the horse carriages are going to disappear, are going to lose their jobs. And look at the U.S. that I forgot the statistics, like around 90% of the population in the U.S. were involved in farming, right? And then we're going to have these tractors, which are now we have 100 people per acre, just doing something in the farm. Then, and in a few years we'll have one person per 100 acres working on a tractor, like right now it's in Iowa or Nebraska. And all of us will say, this is disastrous, like where the water is going. This is like total big crisis, right? Just it's like all the people who are on the farm suddenly lose their jobs. There'll be 50% unemployment, there'll be war, revolution, just like anarchy. So it didn't happen. We were better off right now than we were 100 years ago, right? So think about just, they're very smart people like Elon Musk and Steve Hawkins and others, just kind of creating this red herring that AI, we should be afraid of it. Terminator is going to come. Even you are the same thing. Just you start with L and just saying, look, where it's going. It's not going there. It's every, like if you look at the history, every new discovery, most of the people were afraid of it because they don't understand it, and they were always predicting something terrible is going to happen. And it doesn't.
So let me see if I can create some more controversy for you guys. So, on
the
very fundamental question,
we can
are
go on this
machines
one
better? So on this question of are machines better, so we had a speaker here, a very notable speaker named Marshall Goldsmith a few sessions ago, and he recommended a book called The Checklist Manifesto. And in that book, actually the author, it's all about ignorance versus ineptitude. And just to define that, so ignorance, meaning that science or humanity has not figured out how to do a particular thing. We as a society are ignorant. Okay, so that's one part. Ineptitude is the knowledge is there. It's that it's not accessible or applied properly at a given moment. And he was applying his thesis to the healthcare industry, nurses, applying medicines, surgeons in operating rooms, and following the process and applying knowledge properly. However, now if we take that and we apply it to this world where processing power is increasing by a factor of 1,000,000, and so far we talked about mundane jobs and so forth being displaced, but now in this world where machines, like maybe some of Roscoe's systems, are connected to the body of knowledge of humanity in milliseconds at the speed of light, which is more inept, the machine or the person? So the machine can go out and access all that information and try and formulate a thesis, maybe correctly, maybe incorrectly, but for the human to also try and access that same body of knowledge to try and drive to the same conclusion. Clearly it seems like the human is more inept. So will white-collar jobs, the ones that are less mundane, be right on the heels of this thesis we argued earlier that it's all about really the low-tier jobs? Or are we in a race condition that we're bound to lose? What do you guys think?
Well, the big difference between this enabling tech...
There you
go. The big difference between the enabling technology of AI and previous enabling technologies, such as internal combustion engine, is previous enabling technologies created new markets. AI, if applied incorrectly, replaces humans. So where do the humans go? And I love the idea of the professor is that, hey, you know, we can have lots more potential realities created by lots of people using AI in many different domains and actually push humanity forward. That's a wonderful utopian view. And the counter dystopian view, no, it's probably somewhere between the utopian view there and the dystopian view of Elon Musk, where he's saying the world's going to come to the end through the Terminator, which I agree with Eugene is patently absurd. We live in a range of possibilities, and what the most likely possibility is that we have some form of displacement in areas where we have very low EQ, emotional quotient, and very high unit economics. And I think that we can look at those industries and pretty quickly identify them, where you'll have white-collar workers replaced, and in other areas you'll never be able to replace the value of a person, like a judge.
Like a judge.
Do you want a computer making a judgment on you? Or do you want a computer making a kill decision in the military? I don't.
And I remember, Eugene, we talked about, you know, sometimes it's tough to even trust a teenager to drive a car, let alone assume, or maybe it was really,
Well, no, I was going to get to that example, though, that we have these very sophisticated neural networks in our heads, and we don't even trust these neural networks to get behind an automobile until it's had 16 years of training. And so, and even then, you know, I don't really trust it. And so, which is a humorous way to bring up the competition that I mentioned at the very beginning between creative discovery that learning can do and determinism that a old-fashioned C program can do. And in order to get flight qualified, you've got to be deterministic to go through those FAA rules. You've got to know what every line of code does. You can't have some brain in there because you might have the 14-year-old having a joyride scenario with your airplane. And so I think it makes for a very interesting friction then when you start getting to larger vehicles, things moving around. What combination of determinism versus creative problem solving are you going to allow in order to get an acceptable range of solutions that act within bounds? There's not an obvious way of handling that. I don't know if you're going to pass that to you guys.
I'd like to follow up on your previous statement about doctors and whether you trust a doctor or a machine, Watson. I took part at the MIT forum here in San Diego just a few weeks ago, and one of my colleagues asked the audience, raise your hand if you trust more Watson than IBM Watson than the doctor, and kind of there was confusion, but I raised my hand. I prefer Watson to go to a doctor just to have a IBM Watson make a diagnosis because it has access to the vast, it knows way more than any doctor could know. It will have access to all the latest information on treatments, to all the latest information on drugs, and which could be combined together, which could be combined together. It will not have bad day, it will not have hangover, it will not have personal problems with kids, right? Yeah, it's most doctors will know that they sometimes work for 48 hours without sleep. They do not have sleep deprivation. I would trust that AI, that machine, way more than the real doctor in terms of making the diagnosis. The same with self-driving cars. I mean, trust me first because I'm in control, right? So that if there's any error, it's my error. But if somebody else is driving me, I prefer to be a Google self-driving car than a human. Primarily because I know that the car will be launched only after very thorough testing that it's going to be safer, 100 times, 1,000 times safer than a human. Moreover, I prefer the other cars to be Google self-driving cars, not you.
But that wasn't exactly the question I was asking. The question is, are the algorithms driving that physics-based or learning-based? And I think that's a more subtle question.
I don't know how Google is going to solve this, but most of it is learning-based just because you couldn't possibly write all the code and not check the code, all the possible things. You can write the code that if you see this, do that. But how can you write the code that don't do something in certain contexts? It's how you write don't do statement.
So that goes back to the way these systems are put together, which is based on training, either supervised or unsupervised, and then the domain of knowledge is really a function of its training environment. And to your point, if something falls outside that domain space, you may fall off a cliff technically speaking. I mean, is that where you were going, Eugene? I mean, is that...
Not quite, but it's that I would trust machine more because I know that it's in the sense that like, right now I have when I make in my car when I have a rear view camera, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have to like I'll trust this camera more than myself just looking around through my shoulder and see what's out there. Just the same, just technology actually it's always better than human senses when it's released, when it's approved, when with big corporations which have a lot to lose if they do something half-baked, half-working, kind of dangerous. So when they make something available for us, it's typically way better than you and I or I can do in terms of sensing, making decisions. I would trust that. I would welcome that. And I don't think this is going to, yes, it's going to displace some of people, like self-driving cars are going to displace a lot of younger generation, which right now drives taxi cabs and trucks. They will find something else to do, something better, something more fulfilling. Pretty much like all the farmers. Oh, just imagine that 80% of us 100 years ago would have been farmers. Right? Instead of doing what you're doing, I'm sure you laugh. Most of you laugh what you're doing, but instead you'll be farmers. You might actually like to do that. You might enjoy that, but is it better just to have a choice? You can still become a farmer if you want to, but you have so many other choices with your life. The same will be for those 25 to 54-year-olds in this category.
Makes a lot of sense. I want to segue into the next question, which I think is, and I'd like to bring everyone in on this, how do we get more money into this field, or is the amount of money from a venture perspective and investment perspective, even human capital, is it overdone, is it underdone, is it just right, what you expect? Again, we talked about some of the acquisitions earlier, DeepMind and the one for IBM, there was one for Yahoo, there's several others, companies in San Diego and other places getting significant A and B rounds, so forth. As it relates to the investment dollars going into these fields, what are you guys seeing? Are you seeing a rising curve, a flat curve? What do you guys think? And maybe we'll start with Albert.
You probably know.
I guess unfortunately, venture community has not been incredibly active in this field. I think AI probably is doing a little better than robotics. I think traditionally, this is the one investing in anything mechanical. Just the life cycle is different. The hardware is already hard, and now you're talking about mechanical things that actually move. But even in AI, I think a lot of VCs, they just don't understand. And they're not trained in the field, but they'll react if they see companies like DeepMind get acquired by Google for 400 million pounds, right? And they'll say, oh, we're going to find a lookalikes, and then they start piling in. I guess most of the time, you're going to see these kind of cause and effect happen in sector by sector in the venture capital investment community. And I think there are some early exits right now, and we're actually seeing some.
Do you think the valuations are reasonable, or is this just life cycle valuation?
Actually, for AI, especially in deep learning, the valuation is a little inflated, in my opinion.
Okay.
And we see some Series A firms with post-money valuation over $40 million and with absolutely nothing to show.
Wow.
So it could be a good thing.
But actually, the problem is bigger in robotics. Just if I challenge you to name a single successful robotics company, people say
Roomba.
Robot. It's good, right? And it's a separate conversation why it's succeeding. But the recent one would be Kiva, which was sold to Amazon for $775 million. And if you say how many robots, those are like these robots that are using in distribution centers and warehouses. How many robots Kiva made before acquisition by Amazon? It's just 200. They only made 200 robots. So there are quite a few, more than 10 very interesting robotic companies, maybe 20, 30 robotics companies. All of them are struggling. None of them can find the business model. Just they don't have the revenue. Just the money is not there. So if they have revenue, they can find the product market fit and create products. Then yes, they'll become profitable. They'll be acquired by other companies. Then the VCs are going to pour money into this field. But right now, there's a big problem with robotics. It's like the famous joke, how to make little money in the movie industry. You have to start with a big chunk of money. right? Or the same in airplane industry. The same as in robotics is that it's cool technology, but most of the companies that do in robotics, it's a science project. It's not product development process yet.
Just to pick on that, Eugene, is that because you think, like, when we look at, let's say, a pure software play, like, let's say an AI or machine learning play that's purely in software versus something that requires hardware and engineering and manufacturing and certification, is it a scaling problem? Is that how the valuations are being applied? And it's tough to give more money to something that's, I hate to say it, a physical intangible good versus something that's in software or in the cloud that can scale. Do you think that's anything, or do you think it's more the applications, the lack of applications?
But how many successful pure software AI companies are there? You can name Palantir, right? Multi-billion-dollar company making these analytics. But other than just successful, it says that generating revenue, right? Other than in big data, there are some, but it's still not as much as the best day of .com in 1999 or 2000, just where plenty of companies, a lot of money put in, very few of them were successful. Most of them have died a few years later. But it's the problem of finding an application which is useful, and somebody's going to have customers, someone's going to pay money for it. We spend enormous amount of time and money trying to figure out if we build a consumer product, what kind of consumer product we want to do, we could do. What are the people willing to pay money for? And we just we realize that if you look at the set of all the things people want here, like the kind of robots that clean your floor, robots that water your plants, robots that take care of your washer and dryer and dishwasher, so everything that people want, right? It's like this big circle. Then we look at everything that we could possibly do to be this circle, and the intersection is tiny, and it's mostly a Roomba, the vacuum cleaner. that's the only thing that just something tiny.
Or toys.
Yeah, or toys. Those are pretty amazing toys. The remote control, so that you hardly control the robot. Although official definition of robot by U.S. Institute of Standards and Technology is that anything that has a motor, it could be and could be programmed. So coffee maker is a robot.
Wow.
ATM machine is a robot. Printer is a robot.
The dishwasher is a robot. I mean, I think when we go to say we don't have robots in the home, and we have a Nest thermometer, we have a dishwasher, we have a Roomba, we have a washing machine, we have very impressive robots in the home. But they just
Garage opener is a robot, right?
The garage door, yeah. So they become so much of a commodity. They're almost invisible in our conversation right now. And I think when we see robotics become more and more prevalent, like if we have a little machine that can go around and hopefully open the door and greet the FedEx delivery guy and sign for the package when you're away at work. I mean, I think these things are going to come in incrementally. It's not going to be all of a sudden, something can carry your laundry up the stairs. But I think, with the Internet of Things push now of being able to connect things that are previously, just on-off switches, now you can do things remotely and interconnect them in smart ways. I think you're going to see incremental changes, and more things are going to look like these commodities that we take for granted right now.
Yeah, and we have a saying in Brain Corporation that we call it a robot when it doesn't work. The moment it works, it's an appliance.
Right, exactly.
Actually, Roscoe and Olin, what do you guys think about money flow?
I've probably talked to about 10 VCs in the past week, 2 today. And I think that there's a big difference between the VC attitude towards machine learning and robotics. And I don't know anything about what they say about robotics. I know what they tell me about machine learning. And that is, it's very difficult for a smart VC to look below the waterline and understand what the machine algorithm's doing. And what smart VCs, and Albert, jump in here, because I think you're a smart VC, is smart VCs bet on markets. Right? They're looking for a big market that's growing fast, and so they want to invest into problems because problems can be quantified. And so I think of that as nails, right? You want to find the right nail, and then you build the hammer to pound the nail. If you start with the machine learning and think of that as the tool and start pounding around looking for the right nail, it's very expensive to go to market. It's very expensive to develop a business model. And actually the proprietary things that really work are business models. And the proof of that is probably the largest machine learning company in the world you may have heard of is, of course, Google, but Goldman Sachs and FICO and the financial services. 90% of the world's trading is done by machine learning. So it's in the machine learning space, there's just this vast number of application areas. Some industries have completely been taken over by it, and other industries are lagging behind. So I think it's dangerous to make generalizations, and I think that the money flow follows markets. And if you're attacking a big market that has high unit economics, that is not particularly popular with their customers, you got something. Do you agree with that, Albert?
Well, actually, I would challenge that a little bit in terms of what people are looking for. I guess at least what makes a great investment. I think the conventional wisdom is you look at the problem, you understand the problem, you quantify the problem, and you go devise at least a level solution to address that. But even just in the past few years of my career with Robotics Ventures, we look back on our portfolio. The best companies that the company gives the best return are usually the ones that are not necessarily addressing the original problem they go address for.
Oh, absolutely. The pivot is key.
Albert, can you say that last part again? Sorry.
Yeah. So a lot of times the company is built to solve problem A, they end up solving problem B, and that's what makes the company. And a lot of times, when you look at the best returns in our portfolio, the best companies are the ones we almost universally rejected. And case in point, like Xiaomi, for example. Right? They look and say, why an American company, and what's the difference? And we invest in ways, right? Well, there's already Google Maps, and why do you need another map platform like that? And again, we invest in Fitbit, right? Well, we believe that those motion sensors can be absorbed into smartphones, and nobody want to carry a smartphone device. And they sold $700 million last year. So, just again and again, I think the outside return, at least from the venture investment perspective, happens when you don't really know what the problem is. And you may be thinking you're solving the right problem, you end up what makes the company is a completely different problem.
That gets me really excited because we built ours originally for healthcare and aren't doing that, so thank you.
Yeah. Based on the
So you're
contrarian rule.
Yeah.
Roscoe, any closing thoughts on the venture investing or money flow?
Well, the only venture investing I care about is into my company. And
there you go.
Everything else goes way behind my top of my head. But I fundamentally agree with you that you have to find the market, you have to prove that you can do something about the solution, and it's just all about finding the revenue model that actually makes money. There's a lot of investments in companies that are a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint presentation.
So I'm going to use that as a segue into the next slide, which is how do we make San Diego a hub for this type of investment? And I think, Eugene, you inspired us by telling us about the history and the legacy of San Diego in these advanced technical fields. But I think, Roland, I remember we were having coffee once, and you told me that last year San Diego drew about 170 or odd million of venture investment. The Bay Area was $3 billion. Now, of course, we'll always be the weak sister compared to those guys, but how do we ratchet up the investment for all the entrepreneurs and investors in this audience in these fields? What do we structurally need to do in San Diego? Or are we already there? We just got to wait. Have we built it? We just need to wait for them to come. What do you guys think? Jeff, dive in.
So I'll take a controversial hot potato. If we look at like the social return on investment of what goes into San Diego, I think it would be hard to find a better rate of return than UCSD. Really has been a phenomenal font of patents and new technologies and so forth. We have another organization in town that gets $8 billion of funding, which we see absolutely nothing from, and that's Spayward. So here's a hot potato for you, is if you think of the local economy as a shopping mall, and you've got Nordstrom's as the anchor tenant, what kind of stores do you get around that? You get Tiffany's, you get really nice stores. If you have that same shopping mall and you put in dollar for less, what do you get around it, right? And so I would argue that we have too much DoD defense and not enough Qualcomm UCSD. And that if we really want structural change, we need to find a way of creating room. And I'm a Bay Area guy that moved to LA that came down here. And I was in the Bay Area when we kicked the military out in '94. And what happened was the dot boom. And what created that was room for growth. And people that were looking for a purpose in their life to do something new and different. And that's happened several generations in the Bay Area. And I think that Eugene's company is phenomenal, and what we need is more companies like Eugene's, and more companies that are actually going to be really successful. Success begets success, and wasteful government begets wasteful government. So kick Spay War out.
Actually, San Diego missed on a .com boom, right? San Diego missed on social network boom. It didn't miss on telecommunications. It didn't miss on biotech. We have an ecosystem. So what will be the next biggest thing? Something comparable with the .com. And I believe it's AI and robotics, machine learning and robotics. And let's look at San Diego. How's it different from other robotics hubs like Boston or Pittsburgh or Silicon Valley? Those are the three major hubs. And the major difference, the major advances in robotics will be just when you combine the machine learning, computer vision. And San Diego, as I said, this is the source of all the new ideas, all the algorithms, all the old ideas and new ideas and algorithms in machine learning, computer vision, and AI. So if you look at San Diego, we have UCSD, which actually was responsible for this whole revolution in machine learning and AI. We have Qualcomm, who is pushing more and more towards robotics for multiple reasons. Maybe some of them are purely so egoistic reasons that Qualcomm wants to have its mobile technology to be used in mobile devices which are not smartphones. But hey, there's nothing wrong with that. We all benefit from this. We have proximity to Tijuana, where you can prototype and manufacture your robots, so that you can spend morning in your office, then take a taxi, afternoon in your manufacturing facility in Tijuana, and then evening with your family, with your kids, to your home. You don't have to fly to China. So if you look at all these kind of factors together, we have UCSD Chancellor, who's joined UCSD 2.5 years ago, who actually built Pittsburgh as the robotics hub. Before Pradeep Khosla, Pittsburgh wasn't on the map in robotics. Now it is. So if you look at all these stars combined together, we're in better position than Silicon Valley in terms of just proximity to Tijuana and then having UCSD.
Well, the number of engineering students, I know Olin educated me on this, produced by UCSD is almost as much as Stanford and Berkeley combined, which I didn't even know that.
And computer science department at UCSD now is better than the CS department at Berkeley. So we're better than MIT, we're better in vacation, better than Cambridge, Massachusetts, better than Pittsburgh. I believe it's better than, quality of life, just better than Silicon Valley, it's less expensive. So I believe that the next big wave of innovation, something comparable to the .com, to the internet, to social networks, will be robotics and machine learning, and it will happen in San Diego unless we screw it up somehow. And this is a big concern that we might do something just to screw it up.
Professor Billy.
Yeah, I would echo that UCSD is a very exciting place to be. I mean, I've had offers to go elsewhere, and many of my colleagues as well. And just looking at the potential of where UCSD is positioned and the quality that it has, and what surrounds it, being hooked so closely to the cell phone industry and all that brings, it is a big deal. And so I would say that when talking about the prospects here, you can't overstate the proximity of Qualcomm to the Jacobs School of Engineering, and the partnership there is a very, very effective one, and that's a big deal. I would take a different position in terms of the military. The military presence is here to stay. I've positioned 3 of my former students at the Spay War Robotics branch, and one of my star new students is an employee there, and he's on fellowship from the Navy to work in my lab to get his PhD. And I really think that the strategy is to engage with what's here, engage with the biotech, engage with the cell phone companies, and engage with the military robotics activities that are in town that are quite high tech. And with our guidance and our partnership, we can lead the discussion of how technology fits into security and military applications as well, and I value that. As far as the connection to Tijuana, I think that's also an integral part that we need to work with, and the manufacturing. If we can, I mean, Skyworks is an excellent example in Mexicali. It's manufacturing chips, gallium arsenide chips and silicon chips, better than the Koreans can. I mean, it's phenomenal how good their fabrication facilities are, and using and helping to train the semi-skilled labor south of the border, and engaging our industry, our local industry, with manufacturing locally in the greater San Diego area is I think, going to be a key aspect that other areas in the U.S. I mean, you don't have manufacturing facilities outside of San Francisco. You have them right here in Tijuana, and so I think that engaging with what's here, the military and the greater San Diego production capability, I think are going to be things that help differentiate us.
The other thing I would say, that's the only thing that's missing really from the entire infrastructure, is the access to capital that is willing to keep the capital here.
Yeah.
Because there's so many companies, I was told so many times, you want to raise money, you go to the Bay Area. But what happens when you raise money in the Bay Area, you pretty much have to stay in the Bay Area.
Yeah, you got to be close to
And I think we have everything we need. I actually do love the fact that the military is here, because you can argue about how efficient they are, but the robotics is going to be part of the future, so that's a very lucky break being here. But I think that's the value of that. You have this talent coming out of the school, you have to start the company, you maybe get some technology, and then just incubating it here. We have some good early network, like Evo Nexus and Connect and others, but it's just not enough. It's just the scale of it in the Bay Area is just so different.
So I'm going to take that as a provocative question for Albert, which is, I know you're part of Qualcomm Ventures, but, you know, Olin, I know we're talking this, why does Sequoia not have a branch office here? Why does Benchmark not have a branch office here? Kleiner, why do they not have offices in San Diego, looking at all this great talent, great quality?
It depends on different firms' investment philosophy, right? So a few years ago, we invested in San Diego startup. They got an offer from Sequoia in the Series A, and the condition is they have to move up to the Bay Area. And the company decided to, not to take Sequoia's offer.
Wow. Okay.
Right. So they do a lot of balls for that. But I think Sequoia's philosophy has always been, well, I guess someone actually look at some of the statistical data and saying, you draw concentric circles, away from Palo Alto, and it's like 5 miles away and 10 miles away, and look at the value created, and it's really exponential when you're closer to the epicenter. So I think there is some real network effect going on there, where you have Stanford students and the companies and the capital, they're just like down the street, a few blocks away.
But Albert, what you're saying is exactly, I think, what everyone else is saying, is that in theory with UCSD, SDSU, the other schools we have here, the engineering students, the high quality manufacturing just miles away, the quality of life, we should have a similar nexus of value, right? I mean, the same as Palo Alto.
Maybe I'll try to become a controversial here. I want to inject a little bit dose of reality.
Okay, there you go. Bring us back.
I may think hey, Mexico's so close away, Mexico is doing a great job. But we know for sure that robotic companies actually who started with Mexico and now moved to China. And
another one moved to the Bay Area. So.
Right. Yeah. So people may like to believe we have all the resources here, but the reality is still there are other epicenters, there are other gravity centers that's much stronger. Look at Shenzhen, right? All the raw materials, the entire supply chain is still there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All the labor is there. I don't think we necessarily need to set out try to make San Diego a center of robotics. If it happened to be center, if it happened to be center, I think just really like each and every participant in the robotic ecosystem just focus on how you build a big, great business and a company out there, right? If that happens, when you have a big, sizable exit, it naturally becomes a gravity center. Okay. So what happens is you have first generation entrepreneurs start investing, second generation entrepreneurs, there's some money flowing, then you have the life cycle.
So the first few big exits in robotics, if they wind up happening in San Diego, that'll create a gravity well around San
Yes.
Diego.
Yes.
Pretty much like biotech.
That's right.
In the biotech, there are a few exits, so there's an ecosystem.
That's right.
Investors there, the human capital is
Mhm.
there. It's not huge, but hey, it's all within 2 or 3 square miles.
Yeah. We need an exit.
Excellent. So
If you're talking about some investments that could benefit the San Diego area, though, I would say that with some help, the manufacturing in Mexicali and the Skyworks, the Kyocera, the manufacturing that's already there, that's stellar, and how could we compare to what they can do outside of Hong Kong? With some investment, we could build a supply chain that could allow more a greater range of productivity.
But VCs don't think like that, right? VCs don't. I want to make a San Diego epicenter. They never think about how much money.
They want the best
Right, exactly.
All right, this is a great conversation. I want to take us to the last slide. And by the way, this was my slide on technology unemployment, so you guys preempted that. But I think we touched on it at length, and it is a consideration. But I think the belief of the panel is that it's okay. These things happen, and history has shown that the long-run effect of advancement is always positive for society. So just actually, real quick on this one, and then I want to go to the last slide. Just a real quick thought. So, as we think about robots and devices in our home, you guys call them appliances. Every time I walk in front of my son's Xbox, it says hi to me, which still creeps me out. I know I shouldn't be bothered, but if these devices become part of our workplace and our family, are they members of our family, or are they still strangers in our midst? Can we trust this technology in our midst? And especially when you think about governments and whatnot and all that other stuff, but can we trust? Just like Hal in the opening scene. Yes.
Well, I'll cover that. But, we've probably seen like 5 to 10 different companies doing video surveillance or trying to analyze what happens in video. And there's a lot of value, and a lot of people actually believe there's a conspiracy theory when Google acquired Nest, right? Because they know, but it's like, when you think about it, how much can Google know, like knowing the temperature you adjust there? So probably it's more of a theory than the reality. But what happened is, if you look at look at the ethic question, right? An ethic of an individual is going to be greater than an ethic of an organization. An ethic of a private company is going to be greater than an ethic of a government organization. So I'd rather trust my ethic, I trust my privacy and safety in a private company like Google rather than handing it over to a government.
And that's because their goal is profit-based, not what you're having in terms of your friends over or something like that.
It's because there's more accountability.
Interesting.
Right. I'm the exactly
Other quick thoughts on that?
I'm the exact opposite.
I know we're going to get a lot of Q&A on that. So go ahead, Ross.
Well, it's just, so I'm naive, clearly, because I'm a startup guy, and I'm hoping to make money in this world. And I also believe that I get to cast a vote for my government. As convoluted and silly that system can be, I have no clue what Google's doing. And I'm not a shareholder, and I'm never going to know what they're using the money for. And I don't believe that corporations, when they grow up, are going to continue to do no evil. So I actually don't trust either very much. But if I had to choose, I actually would much rather put my trust in humanity and the fact that we are ultimately democracy and we get to change. And we have historically changed bad governments, but only the good governments change bad corporations with Standard Oil.
Interesting. Yeah. Other really quick thoughts on privacy, and I want to go to our last question.
I think small companies look for success and large companies look for power. And so I think I trust small companies more than large companies.
All right.
I'm going to tweet that.
Yeah, that's what I'm blog.
Good quoted, Professor.
You guys okay with the press?
I don't trust anybody.
Present company.
Right, of course, right.
All right, very good. So I want to end the last topic in a slightly dramatic way. So bear with me. It might be a little bit intense, but for those of you that are movie buffs, you'll recognize the Hitchcock reference.
Melanie? I want you to go as quietly as possible. Do not make a sound until I tell you to run. Then run as quickly as you can. Now, does everybody understand? Yes. All right, John, you lead the way.
Birds.
I think we can make it, right?
It's okay, Jim. Just stay calm and move as quietly as possible. Everyone understand? No sudden movements.
Google search, Bodega Beach House.
By the way, for movie buffs, the reference to Bodega Beach House, the birds took place in Bodega Bay. So, and then Eugene, actually, we got your rear camera into the shot as well. So I do trust those. He just didn't like in Star Wars. So it was a little bit dramatic, but the point is, with all this great technology, getting faster and smarter, just like other fields of study, like biotech and so forth, can the technology get away from us? Can it get out of control? And so, just the last little thought here for you guys on that. Can it get out of control?
Can I answer
Yes.
the question with a question?
Yes.
Can you give me an example of any other technology that somehow got out of control?
Genetics?
Monsanto.
It's not technology. It's a corporation. Technology is not. And in fact, again, to be controversial, how many millions of lives were saved in the developing world by genetically engineered food that we don't want here because we're kind of accustomed to luxury and to abundance of food. But it's corporation of technology.
Yeah, so the pros
We haven't seen the collapse of due to the monolithic farming yet. I mean,
It could
we're
be
on
like
the
Harry,
verge.
so it hasn't happened yet. So give me example of any technology, no matter how wild it is, just that it got out of control.
So let's look at
That
bio.
happened.
Engine,
I'm sorry?
internal combustion engine,
Never
climate
get
change.
out of control. Yeah, this affected us, but it's under control.
It is.
A nuclear weapon. A nuclear weapon. That's probably as close as it gets, but the fact that we're still here clearly didn't get out of control. But
No,
it
it
was,
didn't get. It was
but it-
used intentionally, but it's still.
well, but if you can think of a situation, this probably as close as we got to a point where it got out of control.
So I think that there's some biotech people here for sure, and there's a protocol you use in biotech called the ASMA. What's the name of the protocol? Asilomar. So the Asilomar protocol is probably one of the greatest things that came out of biotech because it actually provided a protocol for safety to control, keep the organisms from getting out into the environment. And I would argue that that's why your example of biotech, why it's not gotten out of control. I think you can't control, it's dangerous to consider AI to be just like any other type of enabling technology, because AI is different because it has the potential to replace human intelligence. And with that, we need something like the Asilomar protocol, which we don't have. So I think that it does have the potential, not likely, but it's dangerous enough that we should probably think through that.
Steam engine replaced humans. Every technology that was developed for the last thousands of years just always replaces a human labor. Just so that it's AI will replace humans, there's no problem with that. So it's no different than from any other technology.
I think we agree to disagree on that.
Other thoughts from the panel? Albert, that's really.
Well, we always see technology goes off the show, right? If you look at the, there were a lot of supersize in the 70s and 80s, right? Because IBM, big factory in South San Jose, they discovered this leak. And they may not be intentionally leaking this, but the result is technology is out of control. You have all these mercury contents in the ocean, and most of the fish, when they have cumulative.
So it's the unintended consequence.
It's unintended consequence. Now you have a nuclear meltdown, right? We have a tsunami, and look at what happened in Japan.
Yeah,
I think there's plenty of situations like that.
The super viruses that come up because of overuse of antibiotics,
Right.
resistance chains. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there are dangers.
Yeah, those are unintended consequences, but it's not technology getting out of control. It's just that, yeah, there is some collateral damage due to maybe some, I wouldn't say it's collateral damage. It's just it's something, yeah, it's just we couldn't predict all the consequences of that.
Like a West Nile virus coming from Africa to America on a plane. So it doesn't make plane technology better.
Exactly, and the fact that, yes, there was abuse of antibiotics. How many millions, if not billions, of lives were saved by antibiotics? And yes, we have some deadly viruses, but it's not because antibiotics are bad. It's because, after all, they're so good. Biotech companies, pharma companies, stop developing new antibiotics because, hey, there's no more market there. Just the ones, I don't know how many of them exist, good enough to treat most diseases, so that there's no profit to be made. Therefore, let's not push further development of better drugs. And this resulted in actually having a small number of drugs. Therefore, this is why you have this antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So I would claim that it's mercury is there. It's just maybe it's poor regulation, whether the government or self-regulation by corporations. Accidents happen, but it's nothing to say about the technology. And maybe the nuclear disaster that's about like where the human crisis happened actually didn't happen. So again, it's an example that technology didn't get out of control.
But it's kind of, logically speaking, just because it didn't happen doesn't prove that it will never happen. And I would argue that, the definition of out of control is not, it is the unintended consequences. I would say, well, it's not a fault of the technology, it's just the unintended consequence. The fact is, the environment is there, and the technology we developed did not account for all the factors, therefore we're out of control. So I think, I would be the last one to say we should stay away from technology, because I just argued a minute ago, an hour ago, that we always will adjust. Humanity will adjust to higher efficiency, but I think it's very dangerous, looking at the global warming, the Cuban crisis, to be complacent. And I think we, as people who are developing technologies, have responsibility to try as much as we can understand the limits, so the unintended consequences are not going to happen. We will fail.
So with AI and robotics could be a whole field of study on ethics.
Yeah, and I think that ethics question is being addressed right now specifically for drones, the larger ones operating above crowded areas, operating near fires that are preventing firefighters from putting out fires. And that happened a couple of months ago near a freeway out to Vegas. And so I think there's some real issues right now concerning the ethics related to drone usage that 5 years from now, how we operate drones is going to be completely different. Right now is the Wild West time. And all of these larger drones are going to have to fly with cell phone-based technology that security organizations can bring down if there's a problem, can identify who's operating it and regulate it away from no-fly zones. So like you, I think I'm not afraid. I think the net use of technology is going to be good, and we need to go forward. But we can't be complacent, because these things that we might complacently call collateral damage can be very significant. I mean, lives can be lost, lots of lives can be lost. I mean, coming back to an example about not taking care of physics okay. I mean, I'm the physicist up here, so I need to advocate physics a little bit, I guess. And so not even a fancy learning algorithm, but it's just a simple thing that has a proportional and integral and a derivative component, a little feedback loop, implemented because somebody thought it would make a cruise control a little bit smarter. It's I found out some information about a flight that went down that killed hundreds of people, and the evidence from the black box is actually that there was integrated windup in a PID loop, and hundreds of people lost their lives out in the middle of the ocean when it should have been safe flying conditions because some algorithm went off in a direction that it shouldn't have. We can't take risks in certain things, and so certain things require determinism in a way that we know is safe, and other things we can afford to be more experimental with. And in the middle is this car driving experiment that as soon as an automatic driving car runs into a group of children, the company, even if it's Google, is going to get shut down. And so we need to be very vigilant about, this technology has to push forward, and these self-driving cars are going to happen. But there needs to be a lot of caution, and I think the whole community of technology-oriented people need to be on the lookout for how can we regulate in order to keep these collateral damages from happening.
So this, it's estimated that 1 million drones will be sold this Christmas season. And yet the FAA still has not released rules on drones.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile the intransigence, ineptitude, slothfulness, incompetence of government regulators in the face of market conditions that you're going to generate 1 million drones with no regulation? How do we deal with that?
That's good. What I like to do is actually use that as a segue into the audience, because I think that's actually a big question. And also, that brings I do want that question addressed. I wonder if that's a great forum question. I think we have some microphones maybe, or not, or maybe you just want to use your voice and project. I think voice. Yes, please.
Well, if you want to do the...
We'll get to that, no problem.
My name's Dan Porcupine. I'm a retired U.S. Marine, 24 years here in San Diego. First of all, outstanding panel. You guys are very good. This is why this organization is successful, because we have all the spirit and attitude in the room right here.
There you go.
Okay, couple comments. Lots of discussion about the good, the bad, the indifferent, and the evil of the technologies that we're faced with having to make decisions about how we're going to use it and what it's capable of. And while the discussion was going on, I heard lots of opinions about what's possible and what's impossible, and what's thinkable, what's unthinkable. I can tell you right now, somebody who spent 24 years in the military, is a direct descendant of somebody from World War II who was part of the atomic bombing campaign. Never say never. Nobody ever thought that we were capable of killing 1 million people in a short few months of period. Having said that, when we invent technology, generally speaking, for the most part, it's civilian intended with peaceful purposes. On that, in 1903, it was a peaceful purpose for man to learn how to fly. We created flight in Kitty Hawk. Within 6 years, we started dropping bombs from those very same airplanes. I'm sure Orville and Wilbur Wright had no intention of that happening and may have not even thought of it. Now, in 1900, the pace of technology and thinking compared to where we are now, 6 years is about 6 days in our rapid technology growth. So my question is, even though technologies are intended for peaceful purposes to supplement life for man and make our lives more convenient and comfortable and to make life easier and to do things for us, at what point, and I'll use an example, do we need to start looking at how do we put the brakes on this for the sole purpose of who are we going to allow to have control of this technology and these robotics and tools of life simplicity.
Let's hand that over to the panel and see if they can.
And I use the case that not very long ago we invented the drone. Shortly after that, we gave the control of that drone to people who arguably, in your case, would say should not have control of it because it's being abused in the power that that device controls. At the same time, now we've got this same technology, although in a reduced, smaller, more palatable form, in the hands of every human being who can afford to buy one at a dime store. We just came up with laws in the last 6 months and in the last 6 days in California about who and when we can use that. But there's no real control of that.
So let's give the panel a chance to address that real quick. Olin or
So
How do we control that in the end of the day?
So the history of flight is a really good one here because at the same time the Wright brothers were working on it, there's a guy named Langley that was a government-funded DOD, that was then Department of War, equivalent of millions of dollars, and two guys in a garage with a bicycle toolkit beat the incumbent, and that's a great story. And I think that's illustrative of what may happen here in machine learning and robotics. The big breakthrough may come from two guys in a garage with a friendly dog, as opposed to the Google and so forth. So I think that gets back to why we need some type of a protocol and recognize that there are huge negative consequences, and we need to have both a culture, because I'm not sure you can regulate this thing. I think it comes down to culture and transparency and accountability. And thank you for your service to our country. And through that, you probably saw the big difference between those that are regulated in the military versus those that were unregulated that would be outside the civilian. And we live in a world where the civilian innovations are probably going to outpace the government-sponsored innovations or regulations, and that's what I was addressing with the professors. How do you reconcile these things when they're moving at different speeds?
Let me get a question in from the back. Hansel, I know you had your hand up real quick. If you could just stand up.
Hi, I'm Hansel. I run San Diego Robotics Club and also a robotics startup called Robotics. We do robotics education. And just wanted to get back to the center of robotics San Diego thing because that's what I'm really interested in. Just for your information, we actually in San Diego, as far as the geographical area, we have the third largest robotics community as far as meetup. We have more than 800 members on our meetup. We have some of them sitting in this room as well. So I think there's really big potential. I think what's missing, the question that I always get, and since we have really influential robotics people here, people are seeking for jobs in robotics, and I don't think it's really hard to find for our members who are really talented, who are engineers at Qualcomm, engineers at Cubic, L3, or whatnot, right? So I think since we have, and there's a lot of robotics companies. There's obviously Brain Corporation, there's Cbotics, which was acquired by Teledyne, 5D Robotics, and then we had 10 best robotics startup, Qualcomm Robotics Accelerator. So I think, since I like to leave with some kind of action item, if we have some site, or it could be bulletin board, and then post all of the robotics related work or job, I think that'd be fantastic. Maybe from Brain Corporation, maybe if Tom's looking for research associate for you, I think that might be fantastic, and maybe from Qualcomm Robotics Accelerator.
Robotics portal, basically, yeah.
Right.
So that's something that maybe folks through networking here or post this meeting can work on, but that's a great suggestion. So I know we're running a little late, we're running a little long. How about one more question? I hate to do that, but just one more question.
My question is specifically for Olin. Considering the zeitgeist you have pushed so forcefully, is it safe to assume that you don't like Bernie Sanders?
I like or dislike? No,
we're going to let any political stuff be handled.
No political. I am absolutely apolitical.
All right, so one last AI or robotics.
So you, being a physicist on a panel, I have another friend who's a physicist. You might know him actually, but he believes that very soon the AI ML will actually be far superior to anything human beings can do. And so as a panel, I'd like you to, maybe some of you to comment on it, that you really believe that, or do you think the human ingenuity that has ability to deal with all kinds of variables in all kinds of environment is going to be superior always?
I think it's a gradual spectrum, and so I think we hand code and C and Fortran some particularly hard problems right now. I think the input that the physics-based engineers are going to be working on some of these computational grand challenge problems will shift higher level. We'll have automatic code generation of lower problems, and yes, there will be some automatic recognition of parameters, and there will be learning that creeps into the process of modeling physics. And so I don't see a sharp division between coding physics and learning algorithms. I see it's a spectrum in there, and you often think of Fortran coders versus AI people as like you're one or the other, but I think that the reality is that you're seeing a lot of automatic code generation going into some of these harder problems.
Yeah.
I think that's the evolution that you're going to lean towards. But I just wanted physics to be part of the discussion, but building up the building blocks that then learning algorithms can piece together in various different ways. I think it's going to be a gradual growth. It's not going to be a flip. We're going to go from this way to that way.
With that, I think we'll bring it to a close. Let's thank our esteemed.
On behalf of TiE, I'd like to thank all of you for coming.